Hello everyone, my name's Tomato Anus. Today is April 15th, 2024, and this is the Speedrun Explained Retrospective series where I watch old videos and I take notes about what they do well and don't do well and just try and learn things from them to make better videos today. If you're watching this video in April of 2025, that means you could have watched it a whole year earlier at Patreon, on Patreon, patreon.com/tomatoanus, middle tier and up. You get access to these videos as they come out monthly, and then they release a year later on Tomato Angus. So today we're covering Doom 2016, which is the first speedrun explained I made with another runner as opposed to covering one of my own runs. I guess I'll stay on this screen. You know, before this point, I was just doing speedrun explains of Fallout. I was transitioning more and more to be strictly making speedrun explains as opposed to me being like making odd videos here and there, reacting to things or breaking down the run. So, you know, staying with speedrun explains, it was a format that I had liked, that I had developed. I'm not the only one to ever do speedrun explains. I love seeing other people do speedrun explains. I want to see more people do speedrun explains. But like I kind of developed the format that I do with Speedrun Explains based on GDQ runs. And, you know, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself as strictly a Fallout person. I wanted to start covering other games. My original intention was to learn games myself. I started learning the Doom 2016 run, actually. I learned the whole first level, which involves a lot of out of bounds, as we'll see shortly. So I was somewhat familiar with the game and its base tech, but I didn't know the full run. But after a couple weeks, a week or so, or a week or two of trying to learn the run, I was like, this is going to take forever. I would, spend several months learning a speedrunning, getting to a competent level with it to then make a video. That doesn't seem very sustainable long term. So I guess something else I should say is part of the reason why I love making the speedrun explained videos is because, you know, there's some people who will react to speedruns and try to explain things and they get it wrong. They get stuff wrong. Game journalists will write articles about a speedrun and they'll get a bunch of information wrong. And as a speedrunner, it's really frustrating to have your speedrun be explained inaccurately without people proof checking it and, you know, spreading misinformation about your run or just getting things blatantly wrong. So, you know, it is something that I wanted to, you know, counteract a bit. So I came up with the idea of beginning to reach out to people to cover runs. Let's see, when was this one released? August 24th. So it was early August, I believe. This had around a 3-week. At the time, my videos, like these videos that I did, had around a 3-week turnaround. It was like 1 week for me to write, 1 week for recording and editing, and 1 week for proof. I don't even remember. I'd have to go back and dig through old DMs, but that would require me to scroll very far. Seeker and I, we've made a lot of videos together. We've made the first 3 together. I'll talk more about that in a second. We made Elden Ring together. We made Deathloop together. So I would have to scroll back very far to find my original DMs with Seeker. But yeah, it was, you know, it was a very quick turnaround. I did all of the research entirely myself. I pulled up like tutorials and watched through those and read guides to write the script. Nowadays, this is something I started with the Stardew Valley run in 2021. I was missing it. There you go. Starting with this one, I started doing calls with the runner where they explain stuff to me, and it just helps a ton with, you know, the sustainability of this long term and not burning myself out. But at the time, I was doing all the research myself. I wanted to, you know, start covering runs that weren't Fallout, but I didn't want to make a huge leap to something like Mario right away, or, you know, something that interests me that isn't, you know, Doom and Dishonored and Prey. They're all kind of related to Fallout. They're PC. They're like games that are super popular on PC. Published by Bethesda. I know that Doom and Prey are/were. I can't remember if Arcane and Dishonored. I don't think Arcane was or Dishonored was published by Bethesda at the time. Maybe they're part of them now. I think they are, right? Because wasn't Deathloop published by Bethesda? Anyway, I wanted to expand out into other types of games, but I wanted to do it slowly push the line of, what type of game you could expect to see on my channel. Still hit I wanted to pick games that had a large overlap with my existing audience. So I picked, through speedrunning, the FPS, the PC FPS speedrunning scene has a lot of overlap in communities. There's lots of community members who speedrun lots of games. So a lot of us know each other. So I knew Seeker before this time. Seeker, I think at the time, had actually done a little bit of experimenting with Fallout 4 and found out how to do a good setup for COC2, which is crazy. Just came in, figured out a good way to do COC2, and then left. So I knew Seeker. We had talked a fair bit about random things, and I was like, you know what? I want to branch out. So what better way to do it than to reach out to someone whom I consider a friend, who, would have patience with me as I try and figure this stuff out, and someone who also has a passion about, properly conveying the information about these runs. So Seeker was just a natural fit, and we started off with just Doom, and I think I floated the idea of if it went well, barring any train wreck, we could do Dishonored and maybe Prey afterwards. It was really just that. I reached out to him as a friend, being like, hey, I want to do this. I have this idea for I want to expand into other runs, and I explained to him the whole process, and yeah, the rest is history. We made all these videos later. Things I remember about this run, this video going into it. I remember that the footnotes, there will be asterisks that pop up in the top corner. It's like, hey, this is something that was removed just due to time. Check the description. And I honestly think that, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole asterisk system that we're going to see in a moment. Because it's one of those things where I kind of have gone back on it, where I'm like, I stopped doing it pretty early on. I think maybe... For sure, I feel like Sekiro was either the last one or I had stopped doing this. Honestly, I might have stopped by Prey. Prey I'm interested in getting to for reasons that I'll cover when we get to it. But anyway, I had this whole asterisk system where I would, if there was something that was cut for time, would call it out with an asterisk, and you could check it out in the description. What else? I remember a few tricks. Like I said, I remember the first level. I remember the BFG weapon wheel glitch. There's no pauses in this. It's just straight shot. And it looks like I skimmed through at one point to pull up the BFG clip or something. I honestly don't remember a whole lot else. Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot else. Thumbnail, since I talk about the thumbnails, I think this is a good one. This thumbnail is always Jabo's favorite. Jabo would tell me, pretty much all of my thumbnails I send to Jabo, and going back to 2019, I would, even like before this, Jabo and I, that's just part of our friendship and relationship. We send each other thumbnails. I always send Jabo all my thumbnails for his thoughts and input. And this is the thumbnail that Jabo always will return to, be like, this is my favorite thumbnail of yours. It's super simple. It's a format that I've done a lot. It's kind of a gradient, the red to the maroon to yellow, as opposed to this Benny one is just a hard color. It's just yellow on the left side of him, teal on the right. This one's just yellow and red, yellow and blue. Orange and blue, it's just hard. There's no gradient. This one has a gradient. It's not super apparent, but it is there. You can see it when it's this full screen. The outlining of characters is something I kind of dropped. I do think it pops and it helps a lot when you're focusing on a video game character at the center. But I think I found ways to make it work without it. You know, drop shadow. I don't know. Maybe I go back to outlining a little bit. It's, you know, even just a subtle white outline can do wonders for making something a little more clear. But or like I think this is a white outline on the edge of the Outer Worlds guy. And that was just because it looked a little weird having the edge of his head be the extent of him here. I don't know. Anyway, let's frickin' get into Doom 2016. I'm excited to see how this goes. Very excited. Note a couple small things had to be cut from final commentary due to time restraints. At any point you see an asterisk in the top left corner, check the description for a timestamp and explanation of what was cut at that time. And again,
Hey guys, my name's Tomato Anus.
I might bring that back. I'm not sure. Also, let me change my subtitles. I don't know why. My settings get changed occasionally.
Also known as Needle Peen, and this is a segmented any % speedrun of Doom 2016. This run is actually performed by Seeker, the current any % world record holder for Doom. He also worked with me on writing the commentary for this run to make sure that all the explanations are as accurate as possible. If you would like to watch either this segmented run without commentary or Seeker's current any % world record, which is also commentary free, there are links in the description below. Also, with this being any %, glitches are allowed. If you would prefer a run without glitches, I would recommend you watch a speedrun of the 100% Ultra Nightmare category, which is a category that relies much less on glitches than any %. There's a link in the description to the current world record run of it, performed by Bite Me. It's also worth noting that the any % run is performed on a completely up-to-date version of the game. Everything you see in this run can still be done on any version of the game. The run starts...
I do like, you know, I don't do call-outs as much, you know, up front being like... I do it with text mostly nowadays. The call-outs to the record or commentary-free version. I don't do as many call-outs these days for like, this is any %, glitches are allowed. Here's a glitchless alternative. I think also part of that is because a lot of the runs I've been covering in the past year or so don't really have glitchless alternatives, you know? Like, just going through, like, I guess Outer Wilds does, but like, Half-Life I don't really think does, Thug, like, I can't remember if I even called it out in Alien Isolation. You know, that's something I do less and less now. It's one of those things that I think can be summarized super easily with just text on screen. You don't have to dedicate 20 seconds to explaining it. Something I did like, though, was me calling out, you know, oftentimes you'll see or hear me call out when things are on older patches, but not necessarily when they're on the current patch. I think it was smart to say this is done on the current patch, meaning everything you're seeing can still be done. I actually really like that. I'm going to make a note of that. I think that, you know, adds a bit of not mysticism, but you know, it makes it that much cooler. Be like, you could do this. You don't like no setup required. You could go do this right now if you have the skill for it. So I do like that. I do like the calling out. This is on the up to date. All of this is still possible.
It's just as any other playthrough of the game would, with the Doomslayer awakening from his sarcophagus and escaping from his binds to kill the nearby possessed. After all 3 possessed are killed, we're going to fire our gun continually until we activate a short scene. The reasons for this is by continually shooting our weapon, it will skip the slow animation of inspecting your pistol after killing the possessed. After the scene ends, the doors open and we position ourselves in a corner before running forward and performing what's referred to as a paper clip. A lot of the walls in the game are paper thin and the player is able to clip through them by just wiggling back and forth, hence the paper clip. Once out of bounds, we make a beeline to the end of the level, skipping pretty much everything with a series of well-timed jumps. When speedrunning the game, binding jump to scrolling the mouse wheel will actually cause for you to jump slightly higher than a normal jump. This is because when you scroll, the game reads it as multiple jump inputs, so as you're lifting off the ground from your first jump, The game causes you to jump again since you're so close to the ground, giving you just a tad extra height. Once back in bounds, we need to get into the elevator and ride it to outside, but unfortunately the doors are closed.
Again, like I've talked about it so many times before, this explanation here about the elevator's a little behind. I won't dwell too much on that. Up to here is how far of the run I knew when I learned the start of the run. But something I wanted to just call out is, you know, I don't dwell on the details of exactly what he's doing on like moment to moment here. I just like beeline to the end of the level, skipping pretty much everything with a bunch of well-timed jumps. You know, I think that's all you really need for this segment. I think at times, even to this day, I get very, you know, forest for the trees a bit. I get kind of bogged down in the details of explaining every little thing that's going on, you know? And I don't think that's necessary. I think sometimes you'd be like, yeah, we're just going to get out of bounds, jump, you know, being careful on the terrain and maneuver to the end. I think, you know, it is good to call out specific things. This part's really hard for this reason, or you got to make sure to avoid this, otherwise this could happen. It's good to call out specific things or what makes a section, an out-of-bounds section, unique. But you don't got to sit there and be like, he's going to jump twice and then turn left and then jump again. You know, a lot of that stuff you can just observe.
We need to get into the elevator and ride it to outside, but unfortunately the doors are closed. Luckily, walls are merely a suggestion, and we can position ourselves in a precise spot and interact with the button inside the elevator, which will immediately begin the elevator ride. At this point, you may have noticed the FPS counter in the top right corner. During cutscenes, it's limited to 60, but during most moments throughout the game is running at 200 frames per second. This is the frame rate that Doom is naturally capped at when playing on PC, and is attainable by turning off VSync and doing things like lowering your graphics and changing the graphics API to Vulkan. Playing at 200 FPS is very important in Doom for one reason: rail boosting. In a moment, you'll see what a rail boost is as we launch ourselves to the end of the first mission. Rail boosting is actually pretty simple to perform. All you have to do is find an object like a railing or an object that can serve as a proxy, and jump while near it, and begin holding W while you're in the air. This will cause for you to launch through the air with incredible velocity. This trick,
You know, again, explaining it after the fact, rail boosting happens a lot, so you know it's okay. If that were the one time we rail boosted in the run, and I keep explaining it afterwards, it'd be, you know, it defeats the purpose of the explanation because you'd have to rewind to see it. This is a part that would be good for slow down or pause nowadays, or probably what I would do now with how I currently make the videos. I think for the time it works. I'm not super happy with it. You know, I would like I said, I would do it differently now. But it's okay.
trick absolutely requires a high frame rate, and if attempted at a lower one, you either won't be able to perform the trick, or you won't have a ton of speed when doing it. Once we arrive at the end of the level, we interact with the touchpad and begin holding enter to automatically skip the end of level stats screen. While this level may have looked fairly easy,
this is getting confusing now. Like, I actually got confused watching this now. Having made the video, I got confused.
Or one, you either won't be able to perform the trick, or you won't have a ton of speed when doing it. Once we arrive at the end of the level, guy, we did that 20 seconds ago. You know, the wording should be, this is a super simple thing that I didn't start doing until at least a handful of videos in, is changing the wording to better fit what's going on. I did it here and there, but like, this is like, especially nowadays, this is the big thing, is constantly rewording and changing the script. I should have said, when we arrived at the end of the level, we interacted with the touchpad. You know, the tensing, it doesn't seem that important. It's a super minor thing, but it makes a huge difference in the digestibility, the ability to understand what we're talking about. Also, speaking of we, use the royal we here. This is something I stopped doing after a little bit. I personally think the royal we, you know, saying we have to do this is fine. You know, it's intuitive. A lot of speedrunners talk like that. We need to do this. We need to do that. It's how a lot of speedrunners talk when they're doing commentary. A lot of people really take issue with it, though. I don't understand why. It's like a really dumb nitpick for a lot of people.
I don't get it, but like these days, I typically will keep it to the runner and saying like he, she, they, just keeping it pretty centered on the runner is the one doing this. So it's interesting to go back and hear the we.
We interact with the touchpad and begin holding enter to automatically skip the end of level stats screen. While this level may have looked fairly easy, I can assure you
Again, while this level may have looked easy, we're in the next level already. So this makes it seem like we're talking about this one that we're going into. And the only reason why we know it's talking about the previous one is because the line right before it was talking about the previous one, and also the word have.
it's actually really hard. Seeker is what one might call a god gamer, and pretty much makes Doom call him its daddy.
It's true.
The second level begins with us meeting my number one frick in all of gaming, Vega.
Yeah.
He lets us know all about the Praetor suit, which you may have noticed we're wearing now, despite having completed the first level naked. After Vega finishes his speech, Seeker is going to immediately leave the room and jump through the next room, which prevents him from getting stuck on the ground since it is a bit uneven in this area, and also look left the whole time to avoid imp spawn. Going to immediately leave the room and jump through the next room, which prevents him from getting stuck out despite having completed the first level naked. After Vega, you may
This
have
seems
noticed
like a very empty thought. It's there's the call, but there's no response here.
wearing now despite having completed the first
Which you may have noticed we're wearing now despite having completed the first level naked. And then naturally you would, that leaves a gap for information of, okay, how did we get it then?
level naked. After Vega finishes his speech,
And then I just go straight into the next thought. So, that seems like a missed opportunity, I definitely should have explained why we have it. I explained, you may have noticed we have it now. Okay. How did that happen? So it's like an empty call and response. It's on top of just bringing, I call it like an empty call and response because it's one of those things like where it's like you're waiting for the answer,
naming Vega. He lets us know all about the Praetor suit, which you may have noticed we're wearing now despite having completed the first level
So
naked.
you're waiting for the
After
explanation,
Vega
waiting for the
finishes his
explanation, waiting for the explanation, waiting for the explanation, waiting for the explanation.
room, which prevents him from getting stuck on
And
the
then you're
ground.
like, oh, wait, no, he's explaining something else that's going on. Okay. Well, now I got to go back a couple seconds and see
Immediately
what
leave
he's
the
doing,
room and jump through
It's just, it's a lot of, you're setting up for a punchline in a way. But that punch, because the setup is there, the viewer's anticipating it, and they're focused on the Praetor suit and how we got it, and waiting for that to be hammered home, waiting for the response. But because they're waiting for the response, they don't hear all of the ensuing things coming after that are unrelated to the response. It's very distracting, the empty call and response.
the next room, which prevents him from getting stuck on the ground since it is a bit uneven in this area, and also look left the whole time to avoid imp spawns.
Also, I'm realizing now this is as far as I made it in learning. Oh, we got an asterisk. Let's read the... Oh, I missed a couple asterisks. At 310, this is why we run the game with all the settings I just went over. Rail boosting at FPS is lower than 200, just won't cut it. Okay. 331, Seeker makes everything in the game look so simple, but really it isn't. That being said, I implore you to learn the speedrun of this game because it is really fun to learn and to practice. I myself haven't actually completed a full run yet, but I've been learning it on and off for about 2 months now and enjoy every second of practice with this game. It's just a game that lends itself really well to speedruns. Okay, what was the context of that? What does that have to do with?
What one might call a god gamer, and pretty much makes Doom call him its daddy.
Okay. 355, he also hugs the wall on the left to avoid getting hit by... This seems like this doesn't seem like it should be in the footnotes. This seems very unrelated to actually explaining it. I don't know. Maybe this is something that you guys would have liked to hear or like me including in the show notes because it does add a bit more personal context. It does add a bit more, it adds a bit more of the human experience behind speedrunning, which I could understand people might like. But it doesn't seem super relevant to me. So I wouldn't include something like this if I did footnotes like this today.
Bit
355. He also hugs the wall, the left wall, to avoid getting hit by a possess, which saves time since the enemy won't have to recover from the animation before turning back towards Seeker afterwards.
in this area, and also
I remember these are like glory kill clips. I remember having a really hard time with these. These are very difficult. And I think this is only as far as I got in learning the run.
look left the whole time to avoid imp spawns. He's then going to stand against the door and damage a possessed as it approaches him. Once it gets close enough, he's going to hurt the possessed just a little more so that he's able to perform a glory kill on it. Then, with precise positioning and timing, Seeker will perform a specific glory kill animation next to the door, which miraculously will clip him through and put him out of bounds. I'm not going to just call this out every time. Again, this will clip him out of bounds. He's been out of bounds for 2-3 seconds at this point. The tensing makes it confusing. That's the last time I'll call it out, but I'm sure this video is going to be riddled with moments like that. From there, Seeker will be able to then progress all the way through the rest of the level to the finish. Along the way, he's going to grab a heavy
asterisk. Seeker discharges 12 times in a row, which is to time out how far he's running since he has no visual frame of reference while out of bounds in this level.
assault rifle. You'll notice that he's able to grab the rifle from a mile away, despite the Doomslayer having pretty stubby arms. This is a trick called extendo grab. If you bind your weapon mod to the scroll wheel,
I completely missed him do it.
He's able to grab the rifle from a mile away, despite the Doomslayer having pretty stubby arms. This is a trick.
Did he do it yet?
Along the way, he's going to grab a heavy assault rifle. You'll notice that he's able to grab the rifle from a mile away, despite the Doomslayer having pretty stubby arms. This is a trick called extendo grab, which miraculously will clip him through and put him out of bounds.
Oh, see.
From there, Seeker
It's so confusing.
miraculously will clip him through and put him out of bounds. From there, Seeker will be able to then progress all the way through the rest of the level to the finish. Along the way, he's going to grab a heavy assault rifle. You'll notice that he's able to grab the rifle from a mile away, despite the Doomslayer having pretty stubby arms.
Yeah, I know I just said it wasn't going to harp on it, but that right there is an example of how confusing it can be and how it's detrimental to the viewing experience. You saw in real time an actual reaction to that.
This is a trick called extendo grab. If you bind your weapon mod to the scroll wheel and look at an interactable object, scrolling the wheel in that direction will bring up the prompt for interacting with the object. This is used several times throughout the run, like grabbing the rifle here, as well as trying to use it.
Grabbing the rifle here. 450. Let's see. 446. You may also be asking how we're able to jump and mod bound to the scroll wheel. Answer is pretty simple. Doom 2016 allows the player to bind actions to both scroll wheel up and scroll wheel down, so we bind one, jump to one, and mod to the other.
To interact with the touchpads at the end of each level early, as we do our best Inspector Gadget impersonation.
Also, I'm realizing, I said I've gone back and forth on these a lot, but I'm realizing now in my head, I pretty much do these nowadays, but they're just on screen. I think the video that really started, I think the Control video had a lot of on-screen notes. I think Portal 2 had a few. I just remember the Control one, I feel like, is the first one where I really started to have a lot of, Chicago guy, Minnesota guy, I miss them. It's been a bit. I feel like it's one of those things where I've started to incorporate it more and more, and they're more of a commonplace in my videos. So these footnotes have made their way back in, but they're just a lot more streamlined now, I'm realizing.
The third level of the game is called Foundry, and begins with Vega telling us more about the Praetor suit. As Vega continues his dialogue, Seeker is sure to stand a decent distance away from the door. The reason for this is that there's an invisible trigger closer to the door. If Seeker stands in the trigger when the level begins, none of the demons will spawn in the next room due to some checkpoint shenanigans. Similarly, if Seeker is standing too far away from the door, then the door won't open because he has to be past a trigger that opens the door. When Vega finishes his dialogue, the bad man is going to give us a little speech, at the end of which the door will open to the next room. As the door is opening, we load the game from the checkpoint, which skips the animation of the door opening. Seeker then immediately...
I get so confused with this plugin. Like most PC speedruns, Doom's leaderboard is organized by in-game time, taking into account how long each individual's loading screens are. Loading screens aren't counted into your final time due to hardware differences between PCs, so it's worth it to access another loading screen if it skips having to wait for something in real time. All right.
He runs into the next room over and grabs the micro missile weapon modification before loading another checkpoint to save some time. The micro missiles are going to be used all throughout the run as a method to damage boost ourselves both forward for extra speed and up for extra jump height. When we load back in, Seeker then begins clearing out enemies in the area and setting up another glory kill clip. This one is a bit more complicated of a setup, but Seeker was sure to lather himself up with some butter before this attempt and slides right through the wall. In the next room, we use a quick rail boost to launch ourselves over the forges and onto a landing across the room. From here, we're able to jump onto some small ledges and pull ourselves up onto some crossbeams, where we do another paperclip via the patented wiggle method. We're then able to finish off the level with another series of precise out-of-bounds movement, followed by jumping back in bounds and accessing the touchpad. One little speed strat that's employed throughout this game is that when moving throughout the level, we never want to strafe. Whenever we're moving, we only want to hold one directional button at a time. If you hold multiple buttons and begin to strafe, you actually move at a lower velocity than if you hold just one directional button.
Wow,
this
fast
next
forwarding.
level
Wow.
is the Argent facility and is actually my favorite level in the speedrun. The level begins by picking up the nearby plasma rifle, followed by jumping from some stairs into the ceiling of the level. From here, Seeker is able to bypass having to wait for Samuel Hayden to give his full speech and open the doors, and enter the main area of the level immediately. Seeker will then jump across the canyon and stand in a precise spot before performing a rail boost that will send him to the final room of the level.
Jeez.
At the beginning of the next level, Argent Energy Tower, the first objective is to get the thrust boots from a nearby room. We're going to perform a quick micro missile boost to accelerate our retrieval of them, after which we perform a rail boost to launch ourselves to the platform above us. When we finally grab the thruster boots, we wait for the animation to play out until we turn the left boot towards us, at which point we load from checkpoint to skip the remainder of the animation and save some time.
It's crazy, like, hearing this video, watching this video, seeing the lines, hearing the lines, seeing the parts I'm having like such vivid flashbacks like, holy fuck, I remember this. I remember recording this. I remember working on this part of the video. It's crazy.
Once we load back in, we perform the same rail boost again and then perform a big boy rail boost to launch ourselves all the way up the Argent Tower. When Seeker lands, he's sure to hit a checkpoint in the main room, after which he drops down the elevator shaft to grab a secret Gauss cannon. With the Gauss cannon obtained, he'll then reload from checkpoint to be back in the main room he just boosted to. When he loads in, Seeker is going to turn around and perform a Gauss boost, which is performed by facing away from the direction you want to go,
YouTube comments hate how I pronounce Gauss.
jumping and shooting the Gauss cannon.
I've gotten so many comments over the years about my pronunciation of Gauss. Let's see. Of course, I'm not seeing any. Figures. I promise there's a lot of comments about how I pronounce Gauss.
The recoil of the gun is so great that it launches him with a high velocity. Whenever performing a Gauss boost though, Seeker is sure to not hold any directional buttons, as that will actually cause him to slow down. Also, if Seeker jumps the moment he lands after a Gauss boost, he will perform a bunny hop and conserve most of his momentum, allowing for him to continue traveling at a high speed. After a brief back and forth with Olivia Pierce, she proceeds to do Lord knows what, which knocks us back. Seeker then has to kill enough demons to trigger the Category 3 dimensional event, which has a countdown tied to it. After the countdown says 6, Seeker grabs the invulnerability power-up and jumps down into the middle of the Argent Tower, and drops all the way down to a platform near the bottom. When he lands, he's going to Gauss boost to an Argent energy cell and level up his ammo capacity, after which the level will end and he will be brought to hell. As he's grabbing the Argent energy cell, the timer to finish the level begins, despite him having not killed any additional enemies from the ones he initially fought. This is believed to be due to the fact that when he jumped all the way down to this room, he hit a trigger that caused a bunch of enemies to spawn behind the first door he passes when he's falling, which spawns additional enemies, causing for the game to hit a max cap on enemies in the same map. This then causes for the already spawned enemies to be removed, which the game sees as a kill in this instant, thus ending the initial arena combat section.
It's
If
interesting.
you haven't been a fan of...
That's very interesting. I think a cool visual for that would have been, maybe having like a bunch of, think of like an array or a grid of like little stick figures popping, like the ones you would see on a bathroom sign. Have like, I could probably ask Seeker, what's the max count on them? Have a stack of them come in like just a default color of like, an empty white or something, and then talk about more spawn. So then like have a bunch more pop in that are like green for the new ones. And this kills off a bunch since it reaches a max. So then like have a bunch of the original ones turn red. I think that might be a cool visualization for it. I don't think it's necessary. I think it makes sense without that, but it always helps to include additional visual cues like that. And that would be one that would be pretty quick to make. So if I remade this, I would definitely make a visual like that.
All of the out of bounds so far, but are still sticking around in hopes that the integrity of the speedrun will soon be saved with long combat sections and playing the game as intended, then you're in luck, because this level is actually played exactly as id Software intended. As normal, when the level begins, we perform a couple Gauss boosts to get going through the level. Then, we're going to stop and use an extendo grab to teleport us up onto a platform above us. We then use a Gauss boost and a micro missile boost to launch ourselves high enough to pull ourselves up onto an invisible ledge, after which we proceed to Gauss boost while we're several hundred meters in the air. We're able to do this all the way to the end of the level, as intended, and just walk through the walls of the final room to access the touchpad and finish the level. I gotta say, that level is a testament to the brilliance of the developers over at id. I mean, flying through the air on invisible platforms, who even comes up with this stuff?
That bit, I stopped to do, I used to do that bit a bit more. I feel like, I did it here, and I know I did it in Doom Eternal, but it's a bit that it was never my favorite. I thought it was funny, since that's why I included it. But it actually that's a really good bit for these videos. I'm hesitant to reuse bits. The flashback, that's more, the flashback works as a bit, but its main focus is hammering home and calling back. The redundancy of the flashback bit I do is intentional. With stuff like this, with how complex these speedruns are, I personally find that redundant repetition helps a lot sometimes. And that's the purpose of those flashback bits. It's not just haha funny. Hey, remember when I did this? And then a flashback to me saying verbatim what I just said. And then like going back forward and me saying it again. But this is a bit that I've thought is funny, but I kind of strayed from because I didn't, I think that it wasn't that great. But, seeing it play out like that, it was pretty good. I actually really enjoyed that. I'm curious as to... I'm thinking right now, like, I did like how, like, I guess the question in my head is, what's better? To say we're going to do this level exactly as they intended, and then there's no commentary, and you let the gameplay speak for yourself, or the second option, which I think in my head I think is better, where you still talk about all the tech, because, it's still funny. In that, like, you're hearing the explanation of all these ridiculous ways that the speedrunner is breaking the game. We're doing this, we're Gauss boosting on invisible platforms, of course. We do the extendo grab, and we're going on invisible ledges just as they intended. There's a lot of humor there. I think that doing it like that makes it work as a bit. Whereas if I were to all the time be like, we're gonna do it exactly as id Software intended. And then you let it play out, and you're like, exactly as intended, right at the end. I think that's the obvious way to do it. And I think that works better for one-off, but as a recurring thing, I don't think it works that well. I think that that as a bit hinges on the breakdown still happening.
The next level, Argent Facility Destroyed, is another of my favorites in the speedrun. I think that for this level, I'm just going to let you watch and enjoy the fact that we're able to finish the level by the time Samuel Hayden is finishing his intro dialogue.
The Argent Tower is destroyed. The portal can no longer be closed from this side. The hell energy flows from a location in their world we call the Well. But you've returned. The only flesh and blood to walk between dimensions. So they're making way. Vega is trying to access Olivia's files. If you can get to the nearest terminal, we will provide you with information. That's all for now.
Like, what the heck, man? This game is insane as a speedrun.
Speaking of, letting the gameplay speak for itself, I think that was well done. I think that was, we'd established the micro missile boosting, we'd established rail boosting, we'd established interacting with things through barriers or walls. I think that worked pretty well. Lots of dead
the
air.
Next level, we begin by recreating the intro of Half-Life.
Hey, Half-Life. Just finishing up Half-Life 2.
Is to finally meet the bad man face to face. It's a little known fact, however, that the Doomslayer is super flaky, so we're actually just going to leave Samuel on red and do some wacky shit instead. Near the start of the level, we're going to load from checkpoint, which resets all the enemies in the area. This is done because there's a mancubus around the corner who attacks the possessed in the area. We're going to perform a glory kill clip on one of these possessed, so ideally we want to make sure the mancubus doesn't kill it.
Lots of loading screens that
With
could have been
precise
cut out.
Positioning, shooting, and a missed fireball from the mancubus, Seeker is able to easily perform the glory kill clip and put us out of bounds. After a little bit of parkour, we drop down onto the ledge of the ground beneath us and load the checkpoint to put ourselves back in bounds. When Seeker loads back in, he's gonna go nuts with Gauss boosting to get onto some ledges and immediately get out of bounds again. He's actually out of Gauss cannon ammo at the moment, but luckily there's some ammo on the other side of an upcoming window. After doing to the ammo what every fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine, Seeker boosts himself over a large gap and continues to boost himself up and into the room that contains the BFG 9000. Once he grabs the BFG, he's then going to reload the checkpoint again to respawn ourselves back in the initial outside area we were in. Whenever you load a checkpoint in,
I want to see this.
Cannon ammo at the moment, but luckily there's some ammo on the other side of an upcoming window. After doing to the ammo what...
Okay, so this is another thing that I feel like I try and capture in my videos, but I struggled with for a bit, that I'm trying to, figure out a way to do more consistently, is like right here. The way my instincts would tell me to do this now is to say there's ammo on the other side of the glass, but you can grab it through the glass, just like what every fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine. There's the explanation, then the analogy. But I think right here, you set up the base info, there's ammo just on the other side of the glass. And then it's using it as a metaphor rather than a simile. A simile is like if you use the word like or as in a comparison, in a analogy. A metaphor does not use like or as. And it's the explanation functions when you use it as a metaphor like this. The ammo's on the other side of the glass. After doing what every fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine, it makes sense. It makes sense what happened, and the joke lands. And it's less wordy. It's more to the point than saying there's ammo on the other side of the glass, and remember, we can grab things through the glass. So after doing what every fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine, just a little too wordy. It's a little too wordy. So I like the setup of information and then the explanation of the mechanic and the tech with metaphor as opposed to simile. Also, I just typed up my note. I've started typing up these notes and then just transcribing them later. I realized I said simile, but in some of my examples, I don't think I said it. Like, I could have, for simile, what I mean is like, there's ammo on the other side of the glass, but remember, you can grab things through glass. So after grabbing it, like a fat kid wishes they could do, or like as a fat kid wishes they could do, it's the metaphor serves as the explanation, not the accentuation, not the flavor. The metaphor is both the flavor and the
That
explanation.
kid wishes they could do to a vending machine. Seeker boosts himself over a large gap and continues to boost himself up and into the room that contains the BFG 9000. Once he grabs the BFG, he's then going to reload the checkpoint again to respawn ourselves back in the initial outside area we were in. Whenever you load a checkpoint in Doom, it doesn't remove any recently acquired weapons or upgrades, which is how we're able to load from checkpoint all throughout the run and maintain all the weapons that we're picking up. When we load back in, Seeker is going to perform the same series of Gauss boosts and jumps to bring us to the ammo window again. He's going to grab some more ammo, as well as running around to the other side of the room and somehow grabbing a chainsaw through the glass as well? I don't know, don't ask me. With his newly found ammo, Seeker is then able to finish off the level by Gauss boosting out of bounds and dropping down to the bottom of the elevator at the end of the level. The Gauss boosting in this section is actually real spooky, because there are some death triggers that you can hit if you mistime your double jumps or aren't moving fast enough, but Seeker is a legend and makes short work of the boosts. Similar to the first level, the doors to the elevator
like I
are closed,
said
but by
earlier,
standing
in the first thing, like the first level, I talked about how in the out of bounds, the explanation was super brief. You know, we're gonna skip over everything with well-timed jumps, and that was a good surface level. You don't need to go into super detailed, save for, you know, it's nice to add stakes to things, and that's what I did right here. Is I added some stakes by going a little bit into it, but not like talking about it on a micro level. Like he jumps here and here and here. So this was
because
good.
there are some death triggers that you can hit if you mistime your double jumps or aren't moving fast enough, but Seeker is a legend and makes short work of the boosts. Similar to the first level, the doors to the elevator are closed, but by standing in the right spot and angling his view just right, he can interact with the touchpad and move on in the game. The next level is the Lazarus Labs, and is split into two sections, sometimes referred to by runners as Lazarus.
The not talking over the loading screens is weird. Like, I could have just started this line slightly earlier, and if I get ahead, you let the gameplay speak, you know? Like, it's so much better to talk over a loading screen and then not talk over a little bit of gameplay than to not talk over a loading screen where it's silent and there's nothing to look at, and then only talking over a gameplay. Just a weird choice.
1 and Lazarus 2. The dividing segment between the two is a short cutscene that is one of the heaviest on lore development in the game, and really adds a lot to the story.
Deep within this facility. Few have ever seen the stone.
This was before I really knew how to. This was when I was
the elevator ride to begin
still
the level,
in Vegas. I was editing in Sony Vegas. I never really was good with audio balancing, so boosting the audio when I'm not talking is something I was not too familiar with or comfortable with.
Chainsaw to kill an enemy through glass, because, as we saw moments ago, glass seemingly has no physical effect on chainsaws in the Doom universe. This chainsaw kill was done to quickly refill on ammo. After a quick Gauss boost and drop, Seeker prepares for another glory kill clip by clearing out some impeding enemies that can mess up the trick, followed by standing in a precise location. After positioning himself correctly, he then damages the nearby possessed and waits a moment before shooting it one more time and performing the glory kill.
I should reiterate that he's damaging possessed a set of glory kill clips. The body parts that Seeker shoots are very intentional. When he's damaging possessed, the body parts he shoots are very intentional. The possessed have to be in a specific animation with a specific glory kill performed in order to perform each individual clip. That's ridiculous.
Kill clip. As soon as he's out of bounds, he's then going to perform a couple Gauss boosts, followed by a rail boost, and some more Gauss boosts to quickly progress through the level. Lazarus 1 officially ends when he accesses the touchpad at the elevator when he enters back in bounds. After the lore-intensive cutscene, Seeker will perform another clip by interacting with the touchpad through the wall. This one is slightly different from others though, because the prompt will only show up when your character is lowering their position. To account for this, he takes out his chainsaw, which causes the Doomslayer to have a slight shaking animation with the rhythm of the chainsaw, which moves him up and down slightly, allowing for him to interact with the panel. Once we're out of bounds, we're going to Gauss boost across a couple gaps and make our way to a boss
This is
fight.
unrelated to the video itself. Interesting. I find this hard to read. UAC spokesperson. The drop shadow that they did has like zero softness to it. It's just an offset of the text, and it's a really similar color. You know, that's weird. That's a weird decision. Like, you can see the gap as well between, like, if you look at the E's and the S's, it's just really messy. Really messy drop shadow. The A is messy. Weird decision. It's
Once
like
we're out of bounds,
there's
we're
no
going to
softness to it, and it's kind of far for how small the shadow is.
Boost across a couple gaps and
And
make
the
our way to a
coloring's
boss
just
fight
not
at the
right.
end of the level. You may be asking why we aren't Gauss boosting while walking out of bounds here. The out of bounds in this area is pretty tricky and has a slanted floor that can cause for you to fall off if you jump
Again,
around
adding
on
the
it.
stakes
Also,
while not going
because
to
our
in
Gauss
detail
ammo
is
is
good.
limited, Seeker chose to conserve it for a later part in the run. When Seeker jumps into the elevator at the end of the level, he's able to jump several times while in the air, due to the fact he crosses an invisible wall which refreshes his jumps. Coming up is the first real combat section of the run, so get ready for some fast-paced action.
I know that I said that to set up. The joke is going to be it's a ridiculously short combat.
After loading a checkpoint to skip some nonsense, the fight begins with Seeker Gauss boosting backwards to put some distance between him and the Cyber Demon, and then shooting the BFG above the Cyber Demon. When the shot is flying above the Cyber Demon, Seeker then slows down time by pulling up the weapon wheel. This causes for the shot to continually deal damage to the Cyber Demon and cause for it to be downed in one shot. Once Seeker finishes the first phase of this fight, he then will load from checkpoint again to skip some more nonsense. Phase 2 of the fight is much more difficult, with the Cyber Demon walling you into a tight alley from the get-go. Our strat for this fight is to shoot the Cyber Demon once with the BFG in order to stun it, followed by micro missile boosting to jump on top of the Cyber Demon, followed by jumping over the big spooky gate to finish the level. Okay, so I may have lied to you last level.
I do like doing counters. In general, I try and avoid repeating the same word too much, but sometimes it's unavoidable. I do like the counter. I like how the counter has evolved over the years. The most recently that I did a counter was when I did the wall count for Hollow Knight. I think that was great. But I try and avoid it's. I really only do these counters when I am having a hard time rewording it in a way where I can't use like pronouns for, it gets too confusing when you're throwing around too many pronouns, So I do this when it's like, there's no way I can reword this and eliminate Cyber Demon, because it's like jumping on top of it while jumping over to this and then jumping over it again. It's just like, okay, wait, what is the it that I'm referring to? I'm referring to the Cyber Demon, the wall, the shot,
Top of the Cyber Demon, followed by jumping over the big spooky
So I
gate
do
to
like
finish
doing
the
these counts. I just don't have too many opportunities to do them because I try and avoid situations where I'm too repetitive, which I cannot wait to get to the Bloodborne video, my lord.
level.
They say Pinkman a billion times in that run.
Okay, so I may have lied to you last level when I was talking about how there was going to be fast-paced combat, but there actually is some combat in the next level, which is called Titan's Realm. Once he begins progressing through the level, Seeker needs to clear out 2 rooms worth of enemies that are adjacent to each other. Luckily, we still have 2 shots left of the BFG, and that can be used to clear the combat requirements for this area. That counts as combat, right? Once he's in the next hallways, Seeker is going to use a Gauss boost to land on a normally inaccessible ledge where he'll be able to just jump out of bounds. Once out of bounds, he's going to then Gauss boost through the rest of the level and then perform a paperclip to get back in bounds and finish the level. I'd also like to say that while making this video, I kept looking for ways to make a joke about Clippy, the paperclip from Microsoft Word, but I couldn't find a way to make it work, and it also led me down a rabbit hole of Clippy Rule 34. So this video took me a while to make for that reason.
Yeah, that's all true. That's all true. I do remember going down the Clippy Rule 34 rabbit hole. That wasn't just a joke I made up. I remember looking and seeing a pregnant Clippy drooling.
Necropolis, and requires a bit more combat. Right away, we begin running towards a teleporter, which, upon entering, we immediately begin Gauss boosting and pick up a missile launcher. We're then going to use the missile launcher to kill some nearby enemies while making a quick pit stop to grab another Argent energy cell and level up our ammo once again. This is to refill our BFG ammo, and it also completely refills our Gauss cannon ammo, which we'll take advantage of by Gauss boosting up onto a ledge to go out of bounds yet again. When Seeker does an upcoming Gauss boost across a large gap towards a big black wall, he has to be sure to land on top of the rock along the wall. If he lands on the lower part of the rock, he will die from fall damage, making this one of the more dangerous Gauss boosts in the run.
I've talked about this before. The wording is a bit stiff. I'm always trying to make my delivery sound more and more natural. I don't think it fully sounds natural. I'm getting better. I'm really getting better, especially when you go back and listen to these old ones. For some reason, back at this time, I had an aversion to contractions. He will die from fall damage.
If he lands on the lower part of towards a big black wall, he has to be sure to land.
He'll die from fall
on
damage.
top of the rock along the wall. If he lands on the lower part of the rock, he will die from fall damage, making this one of the...
It's just stiff. It's stiff and too formal, and I want it to be a lot more laid back, while still, I do think that having a specific cadence that is, it's similar to like a news anchor. They speak with a specific cadence so that it's more easily understood, and I think that I truly. I struggle with speech. Like I wouldn't say it's to the point where I have like a speech impediment, but I slur my words. I stumble over words a lot. And I know that I'm a hard to understand person a lot of times. So I like really try to pronounce my words clearly and separately when I make these videos, to the point of, going too far. But I'd rather have that and have it be easy to understand than have me, speak how I normally speak and make it hard to understand. Plus, having more scripted, like tensing and stressing of certain words helps emphasize things.
The more dangerous Gauss boosts in the run. Once we're back in bounds, Seeker grabs a haste power-up and hits a trigger by some nearby stairs in order to spawn some cacodemons. He then jumps across and uses the BFG to kill the cacodemons, as well as a Mancubus and Baron of Hell that begin to spawn after he grabs the green armor in the middle of the platform. Seeker then finishes off this area of the level and is brought to another boss fight, this time with a Hellguard. Utilizing the same BFG
so much silence.
weapon wheel trick, Seeker is able to make quick work of this boss, as well as the two Hellguards that spawn after defeating the first one. When the fight begins against the two Hellguards, we have to open the weapon wheel pretty early after we shoot. The reason for this is that it ensures the Hellguard on the left won't trigger its death animation where we can glory kill it. This is because if it does enter its death animation, then we have to perform a glory kill within 3 seconds, otherwise it regenerates 1/8 of its health while we kill the Hellguard on the right. The reason why the Hellguard on the left doesn't enter its death animation when we pull up the weapon wheel early is that the Hellguard is busy jumping into the air, which leaves it at a sliver of health where we can just melee it into its death animation after killing the other Hellguard.
Very interesting.
Before Seeker grabs the Crucible, he lines himself with a big chain in the background to ensure he's standing right in front of where the Crucible will spawn. After these quick fights, the Doomslayer is then able to finally claim the Crucible, and is returned to Mars by the same guys who I see surrounding my bed whenever I have sleep paralysis.
Again, not talking over
Back on
loading
Mars,
screens. So
we immediately
weird.
paperclip out of bounds and then perform an enormous rail boost to skip having to actually play the game. This rail boost is actually pretty difficult because you have to maneuver as close to the inbounds area as possible, or else you'll die in midair due to kill zones.
To contain the power of the well. We have a plan to send you there. Vega will walk you through the process.
Once we land, we then perform what's probably the most precise rail boost in the game, which requires us to stand in an incredibly exact location, and it also requires for us to pull up our map and buffer a jump and W input. Despite the precision required for this rail boost, it's still a little bit easier than the one performed right before it. This rail boost brings
Okay, that was really bad. It's like, this is...
location, and it also requires for us to pull up our map and buffer a jump and W input. Despite the precision required for this rail boost, it's still a little bit easier than the one performed right before it.
Yeah, but that wasn't the difficulty of the one right before. It wasn't really established, right?
Boost is actually
Let me rewatch this. Maybe I missed something.
back on Mars. We immediately paperclip out of bounds and then perform an enormous rail boost to skip having to actually play the game. This rail boost is actually pretty difficult because you have to maneuver as close to the inbounds area as possible, or else you'll die in midair due to kill zones.
To contain the power of the well. We have a plan to send you there. Vega will walk you through the process.
Once we land, we then perform what's probably the most precise rail boost in the game, which requires us to stand in an incredibly exact location, and it also requires for us to pull up our map and buffer a jump and W input. Despite the precision required for this rail boost, it's still a little bit easier than the one performed right before it.
I don't know why, but, I did say when describing that first rail boost that it's pretty difficult. I don't know why, but I'm just having such a disconnect with me saying this one, despite being so precise, is still easier than the one right before it. I don't know why. If you guys have thoughts, let me know. But it just, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. Maybe it's just because we're so far removed from that first one then. Maybe it's because I didn't emphasize how difficult it is, you know? I just say that it's pretty difficult. I don't say it's like really hard. It's one of the harder ones in the game. You know, if I had said that it's one of the harder ones in the game, and then we go into the most precise one, but I'm like, this most precise one isn't harder than the one right before it, though. That one was harder because he had to maneuver. You know, maybe it's just missing that additional bit of context why the first one's harder. It just doesn't feel right.
This rail boost brings us straight to Vega's core. Unfortunately, this is where we have to sacrifice our daddy in order to use huge Argent stores to go back to hell one more time. In an attempt to lessen the blow of what is the emotional equivalent of the entirety of Homeward Bound, the Doomslayer backs up Vega and tucks him in our pocket, thus finishing the level and bringing us to the last level in the game, Argent de Noor. The last level is actually one of the most feared levels by speedrunners due to the climbing being very slippery and dangerous Gauss boosts, where you can easily mistime your double jumps or not have enough speed with your boosts. Right away in the last level, Seeker breaks out his inner mountain goat and scales some rock formations. From here, he'll then proceed to Gauss boost over canyons and enormous gaps to go all the way to the final
Super minor. I think that you can cut out
boosts, where you can easily mistime your
in
double
this
jumps or
line
not have enough
mountain
speed
goat
with your
line.
boosts. Right away in the last level, Seeker breaks out his inner mountain
Seeker breaks out his inner mountain
and
goat.
scales some rock formations.
You don't need that and skill some rock formations. He breaks out his inner mountain goat. Kind of the application of what I talked about before, the metaphor being
From
the
here,
explanation.
he'll then proceed to Gauss boost over canyons and enormous gaps to go all the way to the final boss of the game, which is Olivia Pierce in the form of a spider demon. As Seeker drops down into the final combat arena, he's sure to land on a rock to his left along the way, which breaks up his fall and makes sure he doesn't die from fall damage or possibly die from some kill triggers. Right away, Seeker will boost over to some BFG ammo and perform the weapon wheel attack once more. When we perform the weapon wheel trick in this fight, we look at the ground to make sure we maintain a steady 200 FPS, which slows the BFG shot as much as the game can. In addition, we have to wait around 10 seconds to ensure that the boss's phase 1 life pool is completely drained. After this, the Spoder Daemon will begin to drop health and ammo, indicating that it's about to enter its second, electric phase. However, Seeker is able to skip this phase by simply shooting some micro missiles at the boss. After this, Seeker will then grab one more bit of BFG ammo and finish off Miss Pierce. This then ends the game and the speedrun of Doom 2016, and results in a cutscene where Samuel Hayden pulls the ultimate—
The wording on this, about to enter its second, electric phase. The wording on that's just a bit weird. I was thinking about it a few seconds after. You know, this makes it sound like there's a second electric phase, not that it's the second phase which happens to be electric. I don't know how to word it without making too wordy. You know, enters its second phase, parentheses, electric. You know, maybe that's a bit meta, saying enter its second phase, and then say like parenthetical, electricity. Or the electricity phase, its second one.
Second electric phase. However, Seeker is able to skip
Just
this phase by simply shooting
minutia.
some micro missiles at the boss. After this, Seeker will then grab one more bit of BFG ammo and finish off Miss Pierce. This then ends the game and the speedrun of Doom 2016, and results in a cutscene where Samuel Hayden pulls the ultimate sneak Dissa move and steals the Crucible, presumably leading into the story of the soon-to-be-released Doom Eternal. If you made it this far in the video, I'd just like to say thank you, and that both myself and Seeker appreciate you. Seeker is an awesome dude, and if it weren't for him, this video wouldn't be possible. Also, this video wouldn't be possible without the modern Doom speedrunning community, who are a really wholesome bunch of human beings. I highly encourage you to drop a follow for not only Seeker, but also other runners you can find on the Doom 2016 speedrunning leaderboard on speedrun.com. Also, I'd like to apologize if there were any cicada noises in the background of this video. They decided that the perfect time and place to have an orgy would be right outside my window as I recorded
I remember
this.
that now.
Outside of that, if you have any other games you'd like to see a speedrun explained for, I ask you leave a comment below and I'll add it to a list of games that I've already began compiling for potential videos. I read every comment you guys post, so if you have any insults you want to throw my way as well, that's a great way to get them to me. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's not a Fallout speedrun, but hopefully you liked it anyways. Until next time, I've been Tomato Anus, and I hope you have an above average day.
I don't expect you to agree.
There's audio boost at the end.
Continue onward.
Is that it? Yeah, it ends on the title screen. All right. Overall, I was pretty impressed, to be honest. I thought it was good. I think it really holds up. I think that, I have a lot of complaints, mostly about the syncing, which will become less of an issue as time goes on. Just to run back through the notes I took. Calling at the beginning, I called out that this run was done on current patch and that you can still do all the tricks in the game, which I thought was a great little detail. Like specifically calling out that you can do the tricks, all the tricks you see. I think that's good. I think that's really good. I would like to do that in the future. At the beginning, I kept the explanation of being out of bounds as just skip everything with well-timed jumps, and I think that's a pretty solid surface. Let me do this. I think that's a pretty solid surface level explanation. There's no need to go super detailed on that. There was that one part that I went into detail on there being an empty call and response, and I pointed out that now that we have the Praetor suit, we have the Praetor suit despite not grabbing it earlier, but I didn't explain at all how we got it. So, like I said, it's an empty call and response. You're constantly waiting for the response. You're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never comes, and it's very distracting. One of the footnotes / callouts is completely unrelated to the speedrun tech and is not needed. Just want to, don't want to overuse it. You want to keep it pretty relevant. The do the level exactly as the dev intended bit is actually pretty decent, but only because of the fact that I still broke down the level. I think that, if I were to just say, he's going to do it exactly as the dev is intended and then not do it, not explain anything, and then just have the punchline, I think that works once or twice at most across videos, and then I think, that bit becomes worn. There's lots of loading screens that either bit could have been cut out, sped up, or talked over. And then the last note I had was kind of a big one. Setting up information like there's ammo on the other side of glass, and then explaining the tech with metaphor by saying after doing to the ammo what every fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine is great. It's far better than explaining and then cramming in a simile, such as saying there's ammo on the other side of the glass, but remember you can grab things through glass, so after grabbing it like a fat kid wishes they could do to a vending machine. The metaphor, it's good when it's both the flavor and the explanation. Leave it up to the viewer to piece the stuff together. But that's all for this. As always, I would love to hear any thoughts, any comments you guys have. It's hard to improve these things with just, these are just my thoughts on them, on the videos, and I'm not the primary audience for these videos. You guys are. So if you guys have thoughts, if you guys have ideas about how to make things clearer, or if you disagree with something I said, I would love to hear your thoughts. This thing up here is just an echo chamber. It's good to hear other input, other opinions. That's one of the best ways to improve, is to listen to constructive criticism, take it to heart. So if you guys have anything you want to add, feel free. I would love to hear it. I think that's about all for this, though. It's awesome now being in the stage where we're covering actual speedrun explains of not just Fallout. Next month we'll be doing Dishonored, which is one of my more popular videos of all time. It's one of two speedrun explained videos that I have watched since I released it. But that will be a story for next time, why I rewatched the Dishonored video. But I think that's about all. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have an above average day.